You are listening to an interview with clinical hypnotherapist Dr. Steve G. Jones. For a free hypnosis download, please visit stevegjones.com.
Steve G. Jones is board-certified clinical hypnotherapist. He has been practicing hypnotherapy since 1980. He is the author of 22 books on hypnotherapy. He is a member of the National Guild of Hypnotists, American Board Certified, American Board of Hypnotherapy, President of the American Alliance of Hypnotists, and on the Board of Directors of the Los Angeles chapter of the American Lung Association, a director of the California State Registered Steve G. Jones School of Hypnotherapy. I'm excited to have Steve here. As always, Steve G. Jones, welcome to Money for Lunch.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bert.
You bet. And, anyway, I'm back. So, we have talked several times about clarity. And this last week, and I was so excited to have you on the show today, because last week, Friday, it dawned on me that clarity is certainly a very valuable step. But then there's that other step called certainty. And so sometimes we know exactly what we need to do. Maybe it's stop eating sugar, or exercise more, or save money, or make more phone calls. But we don't take action because we're uncertain that it's going to result into anything. And so we talk ourselves out of it. So I wanted to talk about certainty and how important certainty is to making our goals a reality.
I think that's great. And I think a lot of people get a little caught up in, thinking that everything's got to be just right. And I do see this paralysis by analysis. And I think that's what happens when people are clear about what they should do, but they're not 100% certain that it will work out. And a lot of it really has to do with letting go of control, letting go of knowing the outcome for certain, because we never know the outcome for certain. But I've seen this over and over. I've seen it with myself. I've seen it with my friends. I've seen it with people I've worked with. To some degree, it affects everyone. And the trick is to really just get as much data as you can, and then you've got to make a choice.
Yeah, I like this, because you know what? Look, let's take, if you're in sales, prospecting is the key to making more sales. And sometimes, we're not sure that if you make more phone calls or more prospecting that you're going to make another sale. Well, I think that going back to what you were saying, it's not necessarily about having all the facts, because it's very possible you might make 10 more phone calls and not make another sale or make another appointment. But if you're certain that you're going to prospect to get more appointments, then that's the level of certainty we're talking about. It doesn't have to be very specific. It could be a broad level of certainty that you know that, hey, if I'm out there networking, if I'm making phone calls, if I'm sending emails, while I'm doing this higher level of prospecting, I'm going to get more results. I know that I'm in control of prospecting more. The same thing about exercise or saving money. You may not have all the facts, and I'm glad you pointed that out, but you are still in control to your activity.
Yeah, absolutely. And this really says something about success. People who are constantly scared to pull the trigger, scared to move forward, scared to jump into that business venture, whatever it may be. Those are the ones who really miss out. And it comes from fear of failure. You're afraid that it won't work out. And these are the people who never take any chances, who never really step out. And so when you do step out in business, it also is true of relationships. When you do step out and take that plunge, you learn something. It doesn't always work out, but you learn something. So that's where the advantage is for those people who do have enough knowledge to feel that they are certain enough to do it. Even if they quote unquote fail, they learn something, they recalibrate, they come back, they do it again in a better way with more education.
Yes, I like that. And I'm so glad that you pointed out about that fear of failure. That is certainly a reality. You mentioned, dating a little bit, and for us guys, where we're typically the ones who have to go up to a girl that we don't know and ask her out, that can be very fearful. No doubt about that. It certainly has stopped me many times in my tracks, and usually it's because, as you said, fear. It's because we don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be embarrassed, and it's interesting too, because the times where I didn't let that stop me, it's because I was just in a different state of mind, and fear didn't come into the equation. I was, maybe in a more confident state of mind, a more certain state of mind, and so I walked up to the girl, and things worked out. Then on the other times when you feel, I guess, weaker, vulnerable, whatever, you're a little bit more hesitant to pull the trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do see it in those two major realms, business and dating. And, advice for those people who are dating, it does tend to be a numbers game. Even if you are certain and you go for it, it may not work out for any number of reasons. So you have to be willing to, get back in the saddle again and go for it again. And so this idea of quote unquote failing in something should be gone from people's minds when it comes to dating and when it comes to sales, because you really do have to rely on volume in order to get anywhere. Your first choice may not work out for whatever reason. You have to realize that you have to keep on going. If it's sales, you have to accept all the no's to get to a yes. If it's dating, it's the same thing. But eventually, if you're persistent and you keep track of that certainty and you allow it to stay high, that maybe this one won't work out, but if I keep doing this type of activity, that's what leads to the results. If you keep that mindset, then things will work out. And that can be a challenge, especially in dating. In business, it's easier to not take it personally, but in dating, it really actually is a personal thing. And you have to realize at that point that not everyone is right for everyone else. And, who someone thinks will be right for them doesn't necessarily mean that it would be right. So it takes two to tango. And so they may be doing you a favor by quote unquote rejecting you. They may be saving you from a lifetime of arguing and things that wouldn't get along. Maybe they see something about the long-term prospect that you don't. So it's really important, especially in dating, to keep your ego out of it as much as possible, to realize that they may be doing you a favor. And even if not, you just move on to the next one, and you maintain that certainty that it is going to eventually work out, because you're still sticking to your standards, you're still sticking to what you're looking for, and they are too. And eventually, when there is a meeting of the minds, that's going to be absolutely amazing.
Yes, I like that.
You are listening to an interview with clinical hypnotherapist Dr. Steve G. Jones. For a free hypnosis download, please visit stevegjones.com.
And I want to talk about this, because that's another important element there. You mentioned the word standards. I want to talk about this a little bit, because a lot of people don't realize that they have a standard.
Right.
Whether it's, a standard in fitness, a standard in dating, a standard in income. And so we have sometimes a subconscious standards that we're not aware of. And that standard is what's keeping us at that level of fitness or finances or relationship where since we're unaware of our standards, we don't know what's holding us back. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we all do have standards. We have standards for ourselves, and then we have standards for other people. Sometimes the standards we impose on other people are higher than the standards we keep for ourselves, and that's where we see a disconnect. For example, if we are working on fitness and we're still, let's say, overweight, let's say 50 pounds over our ideal weight, just for an example, but we're looking for someone and we want their fitness to be absolutely perfect. We want it to be 100%. Well, there's a disconnect. And even if we don't pick up on it, they may very well pick up on it. So it's important to realize that our standards for what we are looking for, if we don't impose them on ourselves, that could create a disconnect. And there are all kinds of ways to create a disconnect when it comes to standards, either holding our standards too high, holding the other person too high. But really, what it boils down to is figuring out what's your standard for yourself, what's the standard you're looking for in someone else, making sure that you uphold your part of the bargain. You're keeping your standards up, fitness, health, and so forth. And you're also consistently applying the standard that you're looking for. Even if it is a little higher than you hold yourself to, that can be okay because eventually it will work out. But you just have to realize that settling isn't a good idea because that's not going to result in long-term success. And setting your standards too high, if you find you're consistently striking out, maybe your standards are too high and maybe you need to reevaluate.
Yes, and if you're not sure what your standards are, if you think, man, I've never thought about it. If this is kind of a new idea, then it's a good time to sit down and figure out what is it that you truly want, and what is it that you're not willing to tolerate. That kind of equals a standard. So maybe, for example, an unrealistic standard might be a 10% body fat. And never getting upset. Those are two different high standards versus maybe your standard is, hey, I'm going to hit the gym 3 times a week no matter what. That might be an easier standard to live up to. So it's good to look at your standards, find out what you truly want, what you must have, and what you're not willing to tolerate. And it's not that standards are necessarily good or bad. It's just what fits for your life, what works for you. It's not necessarily going to work for somebody else. But knowing your standards allows you immediately to make better decisions and to, kind of get rid of decisions or people that don't fit into your standards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was working with a coach, Chris Berg, who used to work for Tony Robbins. I hired him as a coach in early, I think it was like 2001 or so. And we were talking about dating, and he asked me what kind of lady I'd like to date. And I mentioned the qualities I'd like her to have. And he said to me something that's always stuck with me since then. He said, what kind of man will you have to be to attract a woman like that? And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm imposing a standard on the woman that's higher than the standard I hold myself to. So sometimes it's a matter of that. What type of person would we have to become, to attract someone who we have this high standard for?
Right, and I like this because it to me it applies to everything. What kind of person would you have to become to have that level of wealth? What kind of person would you have to become to have that relationship? What kind of person would you have to become to have that level of fitness and so on? So I like that, and looking at yourself and deciding, okay, what changes do I have to make to attract those things into my life? I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does work. There are some people who will purposely date someone who they consider to be not their ideal standard because they want to have more control over that person. They feel that in the power dynamic, they'll always have more control. So that's an exception. But that's not necessarily based on anything that I would consider to be good. If someone is purposely wanting to accept someone just so they can have more power over them, I feel that people should find their equal, and they should find their equal by becoming equal to the type of person that they want.
I love it. We're going to end on that, Steve. It's always good to have you here, Dr. Steve G. Jones. And you can find more. You can find out more about Dr. Steve G. Jones at stevegjones.com. Literally have the world's largest library of hypnotherapy audios, and anything from confidence to goal setting to relationship to stop smoking. It's everything right there at stevegjones.com. Dr. Steve, thank you so much for stopping by.
Bert, thanks for having me.
bet. Good stuff there from Dr. Steve G. Jones on clarity, on certainty, and on standards. And these are these little things that, if you ponder them, you will see that they have a massive impact. They sound small, but they're actually massively important.
You are listening to an interview with clinical hypnotherapist Dr. Steve G. Jones. For a free hypnosis download, please visit stevegjones.com.